Hey, this is Stevie Rochelle from Tough and Metal Sludge, your favorite website. You are locked and loaded on the Music Mania podcast.
You ready for some screaming heavy metal? We rock!
But the evil that men do lives on.
We gonna bang your head!
You are now listening to the Music Mania podcast, brought to you by CD Warehouse in Gladstone, the #1 hard rock podcast in the Midwest, featuring hard-hitting interviews with rock's living legends. And now, here's your host, Clint Switzer.
Just when you thought the summer was over, the live music had come to an end, the good times had come to a screeching halt, not so fast. Here on the Music Mania podcast, we are keeping it real, we are keeping it live. Right here on the Music Mania podcast, huge guest coming up. We're going to be talking to none other than Aldo Nova. He is re-emerging after 30 years with his new album 2.0, featuring re-recorded hits of 7 of his classic songs and a new song, I'm a Survivor. It comes out October 19th through Megaforce Records. We're going to be talking to Aldo about where he's been for the past 30 years, working as a producer with acts like Celine Dion, with whom he won a Grammy with, John Bon Jovi, Clay Aiken, Faith Hill, so many more. Aldo Nova is a name you know from the early 80s. His first album was a huge smash hit. He toured with artists like Cheap Trick, like Hall & Oates, Sammy Hagar. His song Fantasy is still heard today in video games like Grand Theft Auto. He was a staple of early MTV. Aldo Nova is one of those names that you would always say, when you'd always talk about him, you would say, whatever happened to him? Whatever happened to Aldo Nova? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to talk to him about the last 30 years, what he's been up to, his plans for the future, releasing this new album, first in 30 years. Is he going to tour live? Are you going to see Aldo Nova live for the first time in a long time? This is such a great interview for me, one I thought I would never, ever get. And here we are, the Montreal native, Aldo Nova, going to be talking to us about, what he's been up to, what his future plans are, his comic book collection, which I've heard is over 75,000. He has a whole wing in his house, for these comic books. What a just tremendous singer-songwriter, guitarist. I mean, this guy, his producing work, he has 4 studios in his house. So, obviously, he's still been involved in the music industry, but in the background, he has described himself as a ghost for the past 30 years. We're going to find out why, what happened with that. Guys, it rolls along. The Music Mania podcast, things have slowed down just a bit. Didn't have a show last week. I'm on the road filming a documentary all through the fall. I am literally on the road pretty much 24 hours a day, it seems like. But when these kind of interviews come up, we are definitely going to get them and get them out to you guys, because that's what this show's all about. For us, it's such a pleasure to have you guys. Always be sure to hit that subscribe button on iTunes and YouTube. Either way you choose to take in the show. Our website, musicmaniapodcast.com. All of our archive shows, over 100 now. Just a couple weeks ago, I think we hit the 100 show mark, which is incredible. We can't thank you enough, guys. Can't thank you guys enough for supporting this show and what we do, because the songs on this show. You're going to hear the stories, and that's what we're about here. Getting these musicians on, talking about what they've been up to, what they're doing, the past, the future, the present, all of it. So with that being said, before we get to our interview with the legendary Aldo Nova, I've got to tell you about our sponsor, CD Warehouse in Gladstone, Missouri. For over 22 years, a staple of the Northland. Guys, they buy, sell, and trade CDs, DVDs, vinyl, and more. Do not let the vibe of the old school record store fall by the wayside. Give them a call today. Go visit them off Antioch Road in Gladstone, Missouri. For over 22 years, guys, CD Warehouse, a staple of the Northland. Aldo,
Hey,
I'm great, Aldo. It's so great to hear from you, man. How's everything going? It's just great to hear from you. How are you, man?
I'm very well, actually. Where are you located?
I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. So I don't know if you have much history or if ever been around here much. I'm sure you toured around a little bit in at least the early 80s, but...
What's the weather like down there? Because up here it's like
really crappy now all of a sudden. I feel like I'm in Norway. It gets so dark so early.
We had 100 degrees just about every day for the entire summer, and now we're finally getting a fall. So it's like 60 degrees, kind of perfect right now here. But we get all the seasons here in Missouri, although we get all of them. So we're finally getting a little bit of a fall here, so I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Well, I tell you what, this is just such an exciting time. I guess first off, although it's funny because your name is one of those names that you hear so much when people say, whatever happened to Aldo Nova, right? You're one of those names that come up. Well, here you are. It's 30 years since your last release, and here on October 19th, Aldo Nova, you're back. 2.0 is the album. It's coming up. First off, how did this start? Why now? Let's kind of go into this whole situation, how this got underway.
Well, how did it start? Well, first of all, the 27 years have been quite a long journey, and let me tell you, it hasn't been boring, so there's quite a lot of stories to tell. And why now? It was because when I turned 6 years old, in 2017, April 1st, was the 35th anniversary of my album, and it was going to come up. And so on November 13th, 2016, which was my birthday, I decided that I was just going to turn the page on, everything that was, except the music, all the business and all the haggles with all the record companies. And I was just going to, turn the page. And then I realized that I had to write a new book completely. I had to just shut the book and write a completely new book. And so that night I got the idea, because I knew that normally on landmark days like 35 or things like that, what bands usually do is they just remaster, which is like re-EQ, and they change the artwork. And so I got a whiff of the fact that Sony, that's all they were going to do with my stuff, because, that's basically they just reprint and they make money, and that's about it. You don't do anything. So I told myself, I said, what can I do as an artist, and what can I do for my fans that would really be special, that would commemorate a 35-year landmark, which is special for me because that's the date that put me on the map. So, and that's the record that put me on the map. So what can I do special to celebrate this date? And I had the idea that night. I said, why don't I just start everything over from scratch? Keep the songs, keep the lyrics, keep the melody, keep the structure, except I changed the structure quite a bit in the songs, but make a whole new turbocharged record that has, Fantasy, Ball and Chain, It's Too Late, Heart to Heart, and all those songs. And I added one new song called I'm a Survivor. And so then I started with that. And what I did is I started with the first two hardest songs. I did, let me see if I can do Fantasy. And if I can do Fantasy and get excited about it, I said, then I'll keep going. So then I started with Fantasy, and the way I started was exactly the way I started when I was doing the first record. I put on a drum beat, and I played the chords, and I put down a rough vocal. And then I started building around it, and I just jammed with myself. I literally was experimenting and then adding parts, and I would just come up with a lick, and it was just for lack of a better term, I was playing with myself. So,
well, Aldo, you've been in the background. One quote that I read from you recently, and this is kind of sums up, what it's like, what it's been like for you, because you've been involved in music so much in the last 30 years. A lot of people may not realize that, but you said that you were like a ghost. You said, I would always be there in the background, but I was never there in the foreground. I let the artists do that, and that was the plan. So, take us through that. In the last 30 years, in the 90s and 2000s, you won a Grammy with working with Celine Dion, working with Bon Jovi, Clay Aiken. You've done so many things, but a lot of people don't realize what you were doing, what you're up to. You're a producer. You have several studios in your home. Music is a huge part of your life. Talk about that in between time, these last 30 years.
Well, what happened is the 1991 wasn't really my first disappearing act. My first disappearing act was in 1985. In the first two albums, I had complete control, because the first album, my demos became my album and would fit for a remix. Second album, I did Subject, which was completely off the wall. But, to do a record like that, you have to have complete control. And since Subject didn't do as well as the first album because the company expected that type of reaction. They got involved and they started to make me do Twitch, which was like other people's songs, co-writes, and so on Twitch there's only really one song that I did by myself, which was Rumors of You. The rest were all co-written, and there's actually 2 songs which were actually not even mine whatsoever. And, you know, guys like the record company guys would go in when I was off, and they would go in and do overdubs, and I'd come back and there'd be all this stuff on it. So I didn't consider it an Aldo Nova record per se, because my records are me. I have enough creativity in me that I don't have to do other people's material. But at that point, I realized that I would rather starve and keep my artistic integrity and go back home and just not record anymore for Sony, which is what I did. I went back home and I started to work with a 13-year-old artist called Celine Dion on a French record because I speak French and Italian fluently. And then I started working with her doing commercials. And with that, she had I wrote a song for her called Have a Heart, and she got an English deal with that. And then in 1989, I started sending songs to John Bon Jovi.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'd been writing all the time, because I was like really frustrated. I mean, I couldn't make another record because Sony still had me under contract, and I didn't want to record for them, and I didn't, I couldn't sign with anybody else. So I've known John for like since 1982. So we kept in touch, and I sent him songs, and he called me one day and he said, "These songs are really good. Do you have any more?" I said, "Yes, I do." And in 1989, Sony finally released me from my contract, and so we started on the project that would be like eventually would become Blood on the Bricks, because all the songs that I wrote during the time that I was off became, except for one song, Blood on the Bricks, turned up on Blood on the Bricks. But before 1990, because my demos sound like records, because John called me up to his house in Jersey and said that I have a song that they've asked me to do for a film, and it's called Blaze of Glory. So I went down there, and there's a cassette recording of me with him. He's singing, I'm playing acoustic guitar, and then there's the lick that I come up with. And then I went home that Friday night, and I had to deliver it by Monday morning. And Monday morning he got it, did the vocal, and the film company said, "Yeah, we want you to do the soundtrack." And after that, I went to Los Angeles and worked with like this great group of musicians. I mean, Kenny Aronoff on drums, Randy Jackson on bass. Before American Idol, way before American Idol. He was a kick-ass bass player. I mean, he's badass. Ben Montench on organ from the Heartbreakers. Little Richard came in and did a song. It was a Waddy Wachtel from, it was like from all these things. Jeff Beck came in, so it was an exciting record for me. And then after that, in 1991, I went in and we did pretty much with the same crew, except for Beck, of course, and Kenny Aronoff and Randy Jackson were on the record, my Blood on the Bricks, and we produced it, and we did some of it here in Montreal, we did some of it in LA, and then I went on tour. I found a great band with, I discovered Phil X in Mississauga, Ontario, and put him in the group, and Phil X was now like one of the best guitar players, or most renowned guitar players on the planet. Then we toured, and after that, I don't know, I just went home and took care of my family. I had my son was born in 1990, and so he was like 1 year old. So I decided to go home and do stuff that I was doing before, producing other acts. Like I said, I speak French and Italian, so I started producing French acts in France, and I toured with them. And in 1995, I wrote 3 songs for an album for Celine called Falling Into You. and that sold, I think, 30 million albums, and it won me a Grammy for Producer of the Year, or one of the Producers of the Year. And then I just kept going, and I wrote about 15 songs with Celine, a song for Faith Hill, a song for Clay Aiken, which became #1, and many, many more, like I said, artists from in different countries, in different nations. I even did an album in Spanish with a famous group called La Ley. So I haven't been idle, but the thing is, I am like a ghost. You will never see my name anywhere. I mean, even if you look at any Wikipedia pages, I don't know why, but I'm not listed in the credits of anything. Even let's say Runaway, which I was on, from the very first note of John Bon Jovi's song, I'm on that track. But if you look at the song Runaway, it just gives the lineup of Roy Bittan, Frankie LaRocca, Huey McDonald, but my name's not there at all. So I sort of I'm there, but for some reason, I'm like a ghost. Nobody knows what I've been doing, and so people, I've been called a has-been, a one-hit wonder by people, and funny thing, though, imagine if those people would call me a one-hit wonder here that I did Fantasy 35 years later. They're going to go, man, this guy can only write one song in 35 years. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. I've been really, really active, and like I said, I got the idea to do 2.0, and I'm really excited about it. And it's the first record that I was excited enough about that I said, okay, well, it's time for me, And I think that it's with the new arrangements and everything, it doesn't deter from the songs because the songs are the same, and the arrangements and I went for a more live feel on a 2.0. Like if you hear like a concert live and the arrangements are like that, but the songs are the same. Because when I went to rewrite the lyrics the other day and write them because they needed the lyrics are 20-year-old's lyrics. They're not lyrics of a guy my age. So, I mean, the innocence is still there, except it just met like 35 years of experience.
It's funny because, when I'm seeing of your career, knowing that, when you released Twitch, that there was a struggle with the record company. Control is a big thing for you, isn't it? To have control of your music and what you're doing, and maybe is that kind of what transitioned you into the producing side, where you do have that control and you have control over the arrangements, and now that you have these studios and you record in your own home, like the control aspect is such a huge part for you, and that as a true singer, songwriter, guitarist, I mean, it makes sense. That's a big part of music, and that's all you really wanted was control over it.
Well, I also wanted control over it. See, on this record, there's also, I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, and I trusted a lot of the wrong people. And I would be, there's life coaches that tell you what to do in life. Well, I could be the pinup for the life coaches of what not to do in the music business. Because, I mean, I'm the prime example of the artist that got bent over and that the tree trunk shoved up his butt. I mean, literally, whatever mistake or whatever, I literally got taken advantage of. So on this album, I said, okay, wipe the slate clean. And, I mean, I own everything. I paid for everything. I did everything. I've got the best people on it. I've got Bob Ludwig. He's the best mastering engineer in the world who got involved in the project and really, really got into it, who mastered the record. I've got a great rhythm section that really, when I push them, they push back hard. So it was fun. This record was a ball. But I paid for everything. The whole record belongs to me. I own absolutely everything.
Which is wonderful, and that's exactly as it should be. Now, I guess the obvious question to come from this too is live performances. Is that something that you've thought about, kind of reinvigorating that side of things? I mean, is that something that could be on the horizon?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean that's definitely. I mean, first of all, I mean, the only way to get exposure nowadays is to actually go play live.
Yeah.
I don't. It's not the fact of getting exposure. It's the fact that I do want to play live. I mean, I'm in the best shape that I've been in my life. I mean, I work hard, and I feel that the fans, don't deserve to see a guy that's fat and that goes on stage in a walker. I can't say. I work really hard. I work out. I get up in the morning. I practice guitar. I practice my vocals. I work out for about 3 or 4 hours a day. I run. I'm in like the best shape of my life. So I'm doing this. So when I come out, it's like I'll be like a beast. I don't want to I don't want to disappoint the fans. I want them to have a great show. And when I play live, I don't just want to give them a show. I want to destroy them. So that's my mindset. You know what I mean? And I want to really tour because first of all, I've already picked out an amazing band with an amazing girl drummer, and it's just like going to be a band because when I tour, I let my band be a band. I like a band that looks like a band and not somebody who's out front with like musicians in the back. So I get personalities rather than just musicians. So it's going to be very exciting,
Well, yeah, and it's funny because you had just, on your Facebook page, I saw the other day a T-shirt from the tour you did in 1982 with Sammy Hagar. I had forgotten all about that you guys toured together. Talk about those days. 1982, Aldo Nova comes out. You've got Fantasy, a staple on as an early MTV video hit. Touring with Sammy Hagar, just go back to that. Talk about touring with Sammy, what that was like, how things kind of changed for you at that time. Coming from Montreal, and all of a sudden this album is galactic, and you're on tour with a guy like Sammy, and you gave them a run for your money on that tour as well, didn't you guys?
Yeah, we did very well. We did well on all the tours. I think that me and my band, I think a lot of bands got a run for their money. Whether it was Cheap Trick and whether it's Sammy or whether it's... my first tour, ever coming out of the box, was Hall & Oates. Can you imagine that, Bill?
Absolutely, yes, exactly.
You can. I couldn't imagine that it was like Hall & Oates was singing Rich Girl, and we were doing Fantasy and rocking out. But it worked, because I got exposed to a completely different audience, and it worked out. And then after that, we started doing it, and Sammy was great. He's just a great guy, and like I said, we give him a run for the money every night. It's like I had a great set. We were playing songs from the first album, and I had already written most of the songs for the Subject album. And I've just rediscovered the Subject album now because I'm rehearsing it for the live show, and it's like that record really rocks. The first album's got great material, but that Subject album really, really rocks. It's got some great stuff. And then, the Blood on the Bricks rocks, and, it was great back then. It was just a completely different time. It was different. It could have been like also, I don't know, because back then there wasn't the social media. And that's another thing I can't get used to is social media.
Yeah.
Back then there was no social media. Back then, you had maybe one critic that didn't like you, and that was it. Let's say Rolling Stone didn't like you, they wrote about it, and, that's about it. If you didn't read Rolling Stone, you didn't know about it. You had Cream, you had Circus, and that was my dream when I was a kid, to be on the cover of a Circus magazine.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah, when we toured, we gave them all a run for the money, but we had fun. The bands that we played with were really generous with their time and with their experience and everything. So we learned a lot.
It's funny you mentioned social media because I also think about a tool like YouTube, which is so strange. Do you ever find that, whereas the recording industry is completely changed and probably for the worse in a lot of ways as far as a musician and their ability to make money from their music, but think about the exposure. I'm sure you've got to have stories about just people saying, you're running into people, even kids have access to this stuff. I know a lot of kids and, teenagers that go and find old music. They've got to find, they've got to find Aldo Nova songs. Do you ever had that happen where someone's just, you run into someone, they're like, I found this on YouTube. I found Fantasy on YouTube, and that's kind of a cool way to have exposure.
I don't know what's going on. Let me tell you, like the Fantasy, the first video, it went up 2 million views in the last year alone.
Wow!
I think it's like there's a whole new. The whole 80s and 90s are being rediscovered by a whole new generation.
Yeah.
Because they realize probably that the music today is like too fabricated. I love the 70s because it's like the bands that are discovering like new bands. When the bands that are discovering Led Zeppelin now, or let's say all those 70s bands like Free or Bad Company or things like that, they were on my current playlist back when I was a kid. I mean, that's what you heard on the radio. And these guys are all going back now. So they're going back to, let's say, Aldo Nova, and they see the video, and they dig it. So actually, social media, one thing that bothers me about it, and I had to learn, because when I posted a video teaser for Fantasy 2.0, there was really like, the people that, the trolls and the haters that weren't allowed to, they weren't around before pre-internet. Once they got the internet, then they were let loose on the world. So these people just go out and destroy even if they've never heard you or nothing, they just like go trolling and hating. So it's like, it's something to get used to after a while. You have to develop like a thick skin, you know what I mean? So, social media. It's true.
It is.
You get these guys, some of them are really nasty. I mean, it's like, so I just went like, okay, it's like water off a duck. I mean, I don't care, it's like, and I don't think it should really.
Well, I got to ask you about the new song on the album too. It is called "I'm a Survivor." It was initially written for Lou Gramm, as I understand it. Talk about this new song and the idea of getting a new song on the album. That's got to be a gratifying feeling. Having a whole new recording for your fans. That's going to be a huge part of this thing.
Well, the song actually, I think, is going to be a huge song because it's a song that is autobiographical for me, but it also relates to a lot of people that are survivors, whether it be, cancer, whether it be whatever, that are fighters. But it tells the story more of myself that even after 35 years, I'm still here. And I'm ready to fight, and I'm a survivor. And when I wrote it for Lou in 2009, I just got asked to write a song, so I wrote that, but it was a completely different beast. I mean, it was all drum machines and electronic things like that, and he hadn't done the vocal on it, and the lyrics were completely different, and there weren't all those breaks and drum breaks and guitar solos, and the song really rocks. I mean, it's like, I think that the fans will be really surprised when they hear this. I mean, it's really like a next step in evolution for me, and I think they're going to be really happy with this. But, like I said, Survivor in 2009, he refused it, and then it just sat on a hard drive for a while, and my wife discovered it. She said, wow, this is a really great song. And so then I decided to put it on my album and just, revive it and make it like my own, and which I did. But I think that a lot of people that hear it think it's like the standout track on the record. Not that they don't all stand out, but I mean that one in particular, because it's new and because it's got a particular vibe and it rocks. I think that they just it just stands out to them. So.
Well, although something that's fascinating that I just found out about you recently is that you are. I mean, I don't even know if there's a proper adjective for this for your your love of comic books. You're an avid comic book collector, have been since you were a kid. Jody, I'm a wonderful publicist who we work with on it all the time, told me that you had something like 75,000 comic books in your house. Is that number accurate?
I collect comics. I've been collecting comics since I was a kid, and I have some 10-cent comics. I have early X-Men from 2 to 35, the original ones, and I have a shed. And not a shed, but I have a little enclosure. It's like a little small building that I have behind my house that houses all my comics. And there's about 75,000 at least in there. But it's like I stopped buying them when they became like ridiculous. I mean, once when they got to like 150 or 175 an issue, I sort of stopped because I figured, how can a regular person do that? Nowadays, I look at the price of comics, and there's $7-8 per comic.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not like the artwork that we had when we were young, like with Jack Kirby. It's like all convoluted. It's just too hard on the eyes. I don't know. You have to I don't get the new comics. I mean, And but they made quite a comeback. I mean, I'm sure that I'm sure I've got treasures in there, especially with all the new Marvel universe that's coming out and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I collect comics. I mean, I'm a collector. I collect anything. Baubles, bangles. I just love to collect things, you know?
That's wonderful. I'm all about it. Although I tell you, as we wrap things up here, man, I tell you, I just can't thank you enough for your time. It's so great to have you back. And guys, again, October 19th, that's going to come out through Megaforce Records. That's a 2.0 featuring 7 of your hits, Aldo, re-recordings, and the new song, I'm a Survivor. And it's just so wonderful to have you back. This is just, an interview I thought I'd never be able to get. And this is huge for me. Can't wait to see you live. If we get you to Kansas City, man, we're gonna have to wait till next summer or something, because I don't want you here coming up. It's gonna be, we have brutal winters. We got to get this thing on track this spring or summer. If we get this tour rolled out, man, we really hope to see you live. We got to make this happen.
Okay, Clint.
Aldo, can't thank you enough, my friend. Good luck with everything, and we'll definitely be excited to get the album.
Thank you very much, man.
You bet. Thank you so much. What a pleasure it was as we wrap things up with Aldo Nova, first album in 30 years coming up, 2.0, October 19th. Look for it, guys. This is a guy that's been around and done so many things in the background of the music industry. He was a guy that feels like he probably lost control of his career early on because of the pressure from the record company on his third album, Twitch. It's completely understandable. He wants to have control of his music, and now he does. Releasing this album, it's just I'm so happy for him. I'm so glad to have him back. Hope to see him on this tour coming up when he does play live. Can't wait for that. Guys, the Music Mania podcast rolls along. This is what we do year-round. Granted, things are a bit crazy for me right now as I'm out filming an SEC football documentary called Saturday Supremacy. Out there on the road, going to a different SEC football game a week, exploring the culture, talking with the fans, doing interviews. It's been crazy. It's been life-changing. It's been a dream for me. But my heart always lies here on the Music Mania podcast, and I will do it as long as you guys still listen, still want to hear these interviews, because I know I sure do. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. Nothing but good things ahead as we hit the fall of 2018, transitioning into a different time of year, Halloween, football, hoodies, bonfires. It's my favorite time of year, guys. So hope everything's going great for everyone. Be sure to keep track of us on our website, musicmaniapodcast.com. We will join you guys here for a show coming up soon. Details to follow.